Today we talked about the reboot that's happening with the Magic School Bus, and we get into the topic of education cartoons that are trying to educate us in some form, and we really tried to dig deep and just talk about whether cartoons are still as good quality and if the new Magic School Bus is going to actually be educational or more of just a cash grab. It is Netflix doing it, so we have yet to see, but sit back, enjoy, and thank you guys so much for watching. We'll get to our main topics, which, if you didn't know, one, the Magic School Bus is going to be on Netflix. I think it was information before that it was going to be a reboot, but now that reboot is going to be on Netflix, which I'm excited for. It's kind of crazy, and I'm curious to see. A majority of the people here have seen the Magic School Bus. One person has not. No names will be given, Tyler. But,
I said I've seen some, but it wasn't a show I was really that much into.
You not like science, Tyler? God.
That's why I have Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I bet you never watched Bill Nye, did you?
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
It kind of come around that time when PBS was actually making some really good programming aside from Sesame Street.
Yeah.
This is technically when PBS was in its strides, because it had Wishbone,
Wishbone,
it had Sesame Street, it had Arthur, it had Bill Nye the Science Guy, it had the Magic School Bus. There's another two programs I'm trying to remember what they were.
Bob Ross.
Dinosaur Tale.
No, I don't know if that was PBS, but
it did have Bob Ross.
Yeah, but it wasn't during this time.
That's true. Well, they did repeats, but I know what you mean. Who else did they have though? I know what you're talking about.
I'm talking about when PBS was actually
I know.
the coolest station.
Was Beekman's World on
back
PBS,
when your
or was that something
parents
else?
were watching it.
Was Beekman's World? Was that on PBS, or was that like something else?
Oh man,
I think that was
Actually,
Fox's ripoff.
Yeah.
I think it was Fox.
ABC's morning show, I think, was Beekman's World. My bad. But you had a lot of really good kind of like educational-oriented television that was pretty decent back then.
So do you think this show is going to still be relevant nowadays?
Well, here's the beautiful thing about Netflix is it has that wonderful setting for kids, and now parents will just literally let their children just binge watch the hell out of it to keep them out of their way. So it's going to be relevant in the sense that it entertain children the same way it did in the 90s.
Let me ask you on this. How many of these shows do you think are going to be coming back? So like now we have Magic School Bus coming back. DuckTales is coming back with David Tennant being Uncle Scrooge, which that's going to be interesting.
That's to me.
You didn't hear about that?
No, but my girlfriend's going to love that.
Yeah, David Tennant is going to be Uncle Scrooge. A couple people, was it from Community, is going to play the nephews.
Yeah, one of the characters.
So with DuckTales coming back, right?
It's going to be on Disney XD. What I read.
And Disney XD has been pretty good. They did the Tron continuation, and they also did Star Wars Rebels. So Disney XD has actually been a pretty good channel from what I know. Yeah.
Now, of course, with DuckTales is going to be a completely different animation style than what the original one is.
That was what I was about to ask.
Yeah.
It's
so
not
that's
CGI.
It's almost like the new Warner Brothers cartoon.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Basically done with computer programming instead of actual drawing, so probably more along the lines of Family Guy, but not as well,
like Reboot
put together.
Yeah.
I see. So it's not going to be too bad then.
So that's what I'm also wondering. I wonder what style, are they going to old school animation for this new Magic School Bus, or are they going to do
It's the same Magic School Bus. It's not new, is it? It's just the episodes going on there?
No. I think it's brand new.
Actually, new Magic School Bus.
Yes.
New Magic
Yeah.
School.
Is Arnold going to be the teacher? Like people had always theorized would happen. He would be the one who would take over the Magic School Bus once.
Which one was Arnold?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one was Arnold?
The redhead with the
glasses.
glasses.
Oh, the kid with glasses.
Yeah.
The one who always wanted to stay home. Okay.
He's like, I have a bad feeling about this type thing. Like, he'd always be like that.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be Miss Frizzle again. Miss Frizzle is very
That's what it says. It says Miss Frizzle's coming back in the new
Yeah.
reboot series for Netflix. They already
Yeah, she'd
have
be like
all the
50 years
episodes.
old and just really sad and miserable and hating the fact she's still a teacher.
I mean, she has a magic school bus and a weird lizard and some odd purse thing.
What if it's actually not a magic school bus and she's just giving the kids LSD or
I was
something?
gonna say
Light show.
That could be. You never know.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Behind the
learning
scenes of the magic school bus.
School bus. She's arrested 30 years later.
No, it's just a bunch of kids on a bus and she's hotboxing it.
Magic.
Okay, so let me ask
Anyway,
you this. So I don't watch a lot of like education cartoons nowadays. I don't have any kids, and to me, Magic School Bus was the shit. I learned a lot of stuff about volcanoes and biology and all kinds of cool stuff. Do you think?
Mhm.
Well, the cartoons that are out nowadays, are they like viable education wise for kids?
The ones now? No.
Yeah, I know. Jared, you have kids, and then Ian, you said you have a niece. So I'm wondering if you guys know of any education cartoons, because
I
I'm
was gonna
worried.
say, you might want to talk to the people who have kids, not the ones that are still kids. So with me and my two girls, one being 1, one being 6, yes, I would actually say there are some educational shows out, especially Netflix, because that's all we really have is Netflix. So purchase Netflix and they can watch it all on there. She watches the Magic School Bus on there. They love it. But then there's shows like Monster High and Once Upon a Time or Ever After High School, where it's like all the children of fairy tales. So like Prince Charming, and who's Prince Charming's other half? Prince Charming married
Snow White.
Snow White.
Snow White.
So it's her kid now in I don't know, but now it's her kid in school following them. So it's like the next generation of them going through high school. They have to fill out some book to fill out their destiny, quote unquote, and continue the stories of the fairy tales that we know of. So it's really weird. My daughter watches it. It's actually kind of interesting with how they intertwine these things, but stupid in the sense that now she talks like a high school student and it drives me up the fucking walls. But that's
Give me an example.
Oh, wow.
But as for educational shows like Zaboomafoo, the Kratz Creatures, it's the Kratz brothers. It's their new show where it's like their cartoon form and they turn into animals. She watches that. There's a lot of educational shows that she does watch that actually are on PBS. We talked about this earlier, that she watched PBS Kids all the time and TVO Kids that were educational, but not so much on Netflix, because I think the other shows kind of take away from the educational shows that are on Netflix. When you have a chance to watch, like, let's say some educational show or watch Barbie, they're going to gravitate to Barbie, over Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Speaking of Bill Nye, that's coming back too, so I'm excited about that.
Really?
Well, that's right. He's having a different show on Netflix, isn't he?
Well, I hear he's trying to do one where it's going to be very, very kind of more adult-oriented, I guess, in the sense that he's going to be challenging a lot of the stuff people have been saying and doing.
No, more so like, have you seen his debate at all?
His what?
His debate against
Christianity?
creationism? Not Christianity, but creationism.
Yeah, same thing.
Creationist.
Not necessarily.
I heard it was a big joke. That's why
Well, I don't want to get too far into the details, but essentially, he had a debate against a religious, I don't know if he was a scientist per se, but a religious follower, and talked about he defended the Big Bang versus creationism, and there was a huge debate about that. But lately, Bill Nye has been very much an advocate about educating our children, because from his point of view, I'm not gonna pick sides right now, but from his point of view, there's a certain way that science backs up a lot of the things that we believe about how the universe works, and there's a lot of people out there who are teaching their children based off of religion rather than based off of facts. And again, I don't want to put my opinion in that, but
Right.
he's really been an advocate of making sure the facts come first when it comes to school rather than beliefs, because he has a strong opinion on that, and that's kind of the direction he's been going in. He's been on the news a lot talking about this kind of stuff because You know, he really values education, and so I hope he does do something a little more adult oriented. I loved him as a kid, and I think he's very smart. He still is. He's very educated. I would love to see him and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku do something together, because that would be a great holy trinity, and no pun intended or pun intended, whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of the background of what Ian might be talking about with the more adult oriented thing.
Well, I mean, I can see that, but the problem with the whole creationism versus evolution, it's stupid that the fact that we're in the 21st century and here we are arguing about this still, and the fact that now we're actually arguing about the fact, is the Earth flat or not?
Yeah,
right. Like, we're in the 20th century and we've gone backwards in the world of science. We've gone backwards in the world of of who we are.
Damn,
like in the 90s to 2006, everything was like, boom, look how fast we're moving forward. Look at all this. And then all of a sudden we hit a point to where the idiots got in control from 2006 on. I don't know what it is or what it's happened, or, you have, and then the parents who are clingy to their children. Like, I took my daughters to this kids' place, the Cosmic Adventures.
I saw this today when you.
I saw the pictures.
Yeah, and I took them to here, and parents are like following their kids through these play structures. Like, it's a big hamster cage that these kids can run around in. Parents are following their kids around. They're 6-year-old kids, making sure they don't fall or hurt themselves or anything like that. And it's like, get the fuck out of here. Go sit on the bench and let your kids play. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't follow your children around. Like, release them to a while. Let them have fun.
Yeah.
Release the Kraken.
Release them. Be gone.
But it's stupid. You have these, the fact that now we have laws that, kids of a certain age can't be home alone, before the age of 12, or you can lose your kids and go to jail.
That's 12 now? I thought it used to be like
12.
10.
Now it's, and they're doing a law toward be 15.
Holy no.
But this is what I'm getting at, right? Like, kids can't stay home alone. I stayed home alone by myself in grade 1. My mom went to college. She went to university. She got her bachelor's in management. I was always home by myself. I raised myself just fine. I made my dinner when I made my lunches, and I turned out just fine. I don't understand. I don't understand where all these parents and all, like, let's talon my children and keep them, sucking on my boob till they're 6 years old is coming from.
I know we're far off topic, but I do want to add on to that, because I hate the idea that most people complain about millennials being lazy or whatever, but then at the same time, society and parents are structuring it in a way to where millennials are dependent on everyone else because everything else is done for them. Their thinking is done for them through technology. Their chores and stuff are done through the parents. Like, it's funny that people want to blame everybody else but themselves for certain circumstances that they put people in, because a lot of millennials don't have the skills they need to fend for themselves, and that's not entirely their own fault. So, way off topic, but I do agree with what you're saying there. That is a really weird.
Let me get back on topic then here. What do you think made the 90s better with all the educational television than compared to today?
Well, you wanna hear my take on it? Because what I would consider is that in the 90s you had an explosion of cable television that amplified the need for dynamic entertainment. Like, you had the Learning Channel, Discovery Channel, things like that were just emerging, and they were still a very lucrative advertising opportunity. So a lot of educational programs kind of came out of the woodwork, and PBS, being public broadcasting and having the ability to draw from those resources, kind of was able to capitalize on the kid side of it. So I think it was just part of that being a new visual learning kind of dynamic that hadn't really been tapped before. Not to mention the fact that home media was becoming a gigantic thing in the 90s, because you actually had affordable VHS or Laserdisc or Betamax players where people could buy these shows and then show them to their kids at home in their own time. So you probably had an explosion of other home media devices that were allowing parents to.
Do you think it's also based on the leadership of these other companies? Like, I take, for instance, like during the 90s, it was who was this? Michael Eisner. Thank you. under like he did so much for the Disney company and all the cartoons and stuff, for at least in my opinion, was so much better than today's standard of cartoons that's on Disney. Not all of them, now granted. I know there's some that are good, but majority of them were 10 times better than the crap that's on there now. He did some good things, granted, anyway.
And some questionable things.
And
So
some
here's
questionable.
my thought on that.
But
Not
anyway.
so much with Disney, but just overall.
But
is
I mean,
that-
yeah, it's what I meant overall.
there were a lot less channels, I felt like that, and a lot less airtime for certain kinds of shows. So I want to say there were more channels. It was harder to get your cartoon on there. So your idea had to be even better. But now, just like with video games and even movies, there's an oversaturation of media. Cartoons included. There's more channels. You have Adult Swim, you have Cartoon Network. That wasn't a thing in the 90s. You only had like Nickelodeon and Disney and like WB and Fox at certain times.
Mm-hmm.
So these channels that had to compete with like live action shows. So there were only a small window of time for cartoons versus now there's whole channels dedicated to just cartoons. So that plus the fact that business in general has changed to be more of a money factory rather than quality versus quantity. Now it's more of a quantity thing that can just get people's attention, which isn't hard to do nowadays, in my opinion. So it seems like what we have now is like an oversaturation of cartoons that are more so built on just getting attention and making money through ads and such, rather than actually making high content things that are actually well thought out. Because I've seen a lot of cartoons and they're not too great, in my opinion.
So also, what you had in the 90s was that in the 1980s, you had visionaries at companies like Hasbro and Mattel and those big toy companies that they came up with the idea of making cartoons to sell toys. Like the entire purpose of G.I. Joe was to sell toys. The entire purpose of He-Man was to sell toys. Same with My Little Pony, Care Bears, all of that. Those shows existed to sell toys and push products. So that definitely opened up a gigantic window into how people would proceed with how they produce cartoons for the longest time. And it seemed like that almost kind of fell by the wayside for a while when you hit like the late 90s, early 2000s, because I don't think you probably had a little bit of a gap where there weren't that many new children coming into the market perhaps, but it kind of fell by the wayside. Then you had shit like Ben 10 and stuff that came out later. But those educational programs, I think, that emerged in the 90s had the benefit of that extra funding that was going into their animation and not to mention their marketing.
See, I think there was a big difference between the way that the Americans produced your guys' cartoons and the way that Canada produced our cartoons. I mean, you said there wasn't a bunch of channels growing up. Well, we in Canada, we had YTV, we had Teletoon, which was before that the Cartoon Network on our side, the Canadian Cartoon Network. That was just cartoons. YTV was cartoons. We had Family Channel, that was pretty much all cartoons. The Disney Channel. So we had more channels, but the way that in order for stuff to be broadcast off those channels had to be 22 minutes long, had to have a host in between the shows at certain times.
Isn't a lot of that have to do with the fact that Canadian television has to have X amount produced by Canadians or something like that?
Used to. Not anymore.
Not anymore, okay.
Not anymore. Now we can pick up American shows for all the channels. But the rule was if you're producing something in Canada, it couldn't be a glorified commercial. Had to have some source of educational value. Also had to be a certain time limit. Couldn't be any longer and couldn't be any shorter. And had to have an availability to have a live host in between certain times. So from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., the channels had to have live hosts. So that way it didn't show that they were just schlocking commercials in those 22 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. So, that's why YTV had their video hosts, their VJs and stuff like this. And like their video or their whatever hour of live hostings for their shows. Family Channel had the same thing. The Cartoon Network was the only one that didn't have that because they fought it because they're like, we're just a Cartoon Network, we don't have any live shows, we refuse to have live shows, so having a live person on there won't work. And that's when the Canadian side started to change to where they started getting rid of these VJs and started allowing more commercials to be played per cartoon shows.
Let me ask you this though. Do you think it's also due to the fact that the type of animation it is? Because everything in the 90s was hand-drawn animation. Nowadays,
Canada came out with Reboot, and we did Beast Wars, and we did, we were responsible for that. So Canada was way above the rest of your guys.
well, right? But I mean, I'm just saying, in general, like from the 90s, all of our stuff, cartoons and all that, was hand-drawn animation. Nowadays, it's either CG or kind of a flash animation, and not old school stuff. Because that is what I loved about the stuff I used to watch. It was all hand drawn. He didn't have this cheap, fast way of doing it like CG is. Now, granted, CG technically isn't cheap per se, but the quality isn't like it is with hand drawn.
I agree with the fact that a lot of the times 3D animation isn't as good quality, but that's because of not because of the media, but because of the person behind the media. Things like Reboot were great because the storyline and stuff, but the animation just wasn't there. I'm very hard on animators. I'm not a great animator myself, but that's what my major was, and that or the modeling or the lighting weren't done well enough. And when they're trying to take a shortcut production-wise, and they wind up not looking as good a quality. So it's not so much. I get what you're saying, but it's not so much the media. It's the people behind it not doing a good job. It's like the Dragon Ball Evolution, or what was it called? Dragon Ball Kai. The first few episodes or so were like shitty quality because they weren't done by the main team. They were done by like students or something, so they didn't look as good. So you can have hand drawn still look bad, just like with 3D or.
Well, right. It's all based on how much quality of time is given to make it look good too.
Yeah.
Well, that or just money put into the project as well.
Yeah, true. That is also.
Because you're looking at like to produce something that's like hand-drawn animation. These numbers are based off of like I think early 2000 numbers. I haven't looked at them recently, but you were looking at to have something done in either Japan or Korea. You were looking at about $100,000 per half hour of animation, and that's just basic animation. That's not the aggressive coloring or a lot of action. So that's just half hour. Basic animation. So you're already looking at $100,000 investment in 30 minutes.
And granted, hand-drawn animation also takes like how many years to do?
Well, no, hand-drawn animation, you can have a project done in 3 months. Like you put $100,000, you put a 3-month timeline on it, they can get it done pretty quickly. You're not looking at the massive turnaround time you would like, because a lot of CG projects require years because they have to render those frames. But hand-drawn stuff, depending on the way they fabricate it, like for example, an episode of Family Guy in the late '90s would take about 3 months to make. Is how long a show like that would take to animate. Now they do it all with computer-aided drafting.
See, pretty much, I think I'll put a pin in this conversation because I think the world of cartoons changed when I can't watch the original Bugs Bunny and Tweety show in the new PC world, when it used to be half an hour long and now it's 10 minutes because everything that's PC has been cut out.
Ooh, yeah.
Bugs Bunny and Tweety show that I grew up watching. It's cut out and it's all gone.
That's the other thing about today's stuff.
Didn't they used to cut out like Speedy Gonzalez because they thought it was racist?
Well, they did for a while, and then the Hispanic community was like, "No, he's actually pretty great, and we like him." And they're like, "Oh, let's bring him back."
Well, that's like today's Looney Tunes style. It's completely different than the old style of Tex Avery and all that, because that was stuff I grew up, and it was awesome. And not just that, it was also the innuendos that were in all the shows that, as kids, went right over your head, but now as adults, you go back and watch, you go, oh my God! I can't believe they did that.
Yeah.
Pepe Le Pew. Pepe Le Pew was a racist with bestiality. Like he was in love with a cat and was trying to rape that cat.
Wait. How's that bestiality when they're both animals?
No, we're an animal too. That's like us trying to have sex with a monkey. That's still bestiality.
I don't consider
it was a skunk, though. So, I mean,
a skunk, which is a rodent, and a cat, which is a feline. Come on now.
I think you mean
you got to know these things. You're a furry. Anywho,
but yeah, I mean, with stuff like that, like that was what made those cartoons great, was those innuendos that you never notice until you're much older and realize, oh wow,
well, that's what I'm talking about.
Like Animaniacs was amazing at that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh, hello, nurse.
Hello,
nurse.
within society, we're still hitting growing pains mature wise. So that's why we're hitting this whole political correctness thing, because we're understanding there's certain things that offend people, but now we're getting like overly offended or under offended. And so that's kind of playing into cartoons, because it's kind of seen overall as a media for kids, even though that's not necessarily always the case.
No, originally it was aiming towards adults, but kids liked it more.
Right. Well, originally, Looney Tunes were like the feature ahead of your film, because you go to a theater and you'd catch the latest Looney Tunes and you'd watch your movie. It was kind of the way it was done back then, because a lot of the Looney Tunes we grew up with, believe it or not, were done in the 40s.
Yeah,
they're that freaking old.
Yeah, I knew they were old.
They're amazing. Yeah. And I don't even think any of the cartoons today beat that, because those cartoons were just absolutely just well done.
Well, also that has to do with the fact that it was an army of people doing it, and it was completely different animation projects. But I mean, like, if you want to look at a really well animated, like probably one of the best animated films or animated shows that came out, if you watch Batman the Animated Series that came out in the early '90s, that show was phenomenally animated.
Oh,
and
that was
kind of the tail end of animation, basically. But even then, like, you want to look at like the golden age of Disney with like Lion King and stuff like that. That's where hand-drawn animation kind of reached its peak. But it's kind of like the whole story dynamic with the animation quality that they managed to pull off, and that was kind of the apex of what could be achieved with hand-drawn animation. But even then, like Akira, for example, is an insanely well done, but that's Japanese animation.
Let me ask you this. Wasn't the last feature film from Disney that was hand-drawn, The Princess and the Frog?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the most recent one, It
wasn't great, but it was okay.
I liked it.
But compare that film to all the recent stuff. Most of it's been CG, unless I'm mistaken.
But
like also Disney animation and Pixar stuff. But anyway, go on, Ian, as you were saying.
Well, here's what happened. CG came about so successfully because of Pixar and the way they did it. And not to mention that Disney made some interesting choices in their like last two big budget animation films, namely Treasure Planet, which was a $140 million animated film, which, I mean, that's really hard to recoup your money on. It made like 120 at the box office, which is really impressive for an animated film. But not to mention the fact you had a lot of blunders being done with animation studios in the late 90s and early 2000s, like namely Titan AE was another project they spent $100 million doing, and it didn't even come close to making back its money. So animation studios tanked themselves, and there was this trend where they kind of reverbed and bounced towards CG. And we're reaching a point now where CG is becoming more approachable because of how cheap the hardware is getting. So we're getting a lot more of that now, not to mention the fact you have a lot of Chinese studios that just make crap animation, and then American firms pay the money to make these things. So that's why you get a lot of those like Disney morning shows with that. But long story short, essentially, hand-drawn animation tanked itself in the early 2000s because of the overblown nature of these projects. Even though I would say Titan AE was a fantastic film, Treasure Planet was a really, really intriguing and well-animated film. It just, unfortunately, they were never going to get the money out of it they sunk into it, and so they sank those projects. Instead, and not to mention what ended up happening with because in the late 80s you had Disney did another insanely expensive animation project, The Black Cauldron, which they dumped. It was like $44 million, which was phenomenally expensive for an animated film back in that period.
I don't think I heard that movie. What is that movie?
Well, it's kind of like a fantasy film, kind of actually more like dark.
Medieval, isn't it?
Kind of like medieval, yeah. Like I have actually never seen it because Disney to this day hasn't re-released it. So it's
on Netflix.
Wasn't it under their
now?
I'll have to check that out. But yeah, it's on Netflix now. But Disney.
It was on Canadian Netflix. It was on Canadian Netflix.
Okay,
what's the movie called again?
Disney didn't re-release that for at least 20 years. If it's on Netflix now, that's awesome. I'm going to go watch it as soon as I can. But yeah, so like that film tanked, unfortunately. So animation has had this very rickety kind of road to where they weren't getting the money they were putting in out of it. So that's why we've switched to CG now, because especially now where you can have these gigantic server farms where you can recycle them to do other projects pretty quickly, where when you do a singular animated film, you're not going to get any of those materials back.
I hope that the new Magic School Bus is going to be good. It'd be interesting to have the old Miss Frizzle, but I'm sure she's probably too old, or who knows. There's still a lot of speculation going out there right now, so I don't have any confirmed facts as to who's going to be in it and exactly what. We know Miss Frizzle's going to be in it, but we don't know who's playing her. We don't know if Izzy and the same Magic School Bus is going to be beat down. The kids are all grown up and they're Captain Planet now. We don't know, but I hope it's good. I hope it's still informative, not just some sort of like high action Transformers sort of thing to get a cash grab. But Netflix has done great, so that makes me more confident. Side note, watch Black Mirror, not your kids, adults. But yeah, that's my last thought. I'll go down the line. If anyone has anything else they want to add to it, they can do that before they let you know where you can find them. Starting with Ian.
Yeah, something I'll say about Netflix doing Magic School Bus is you have another really good animation project Netflix just did was Voltron. If you've seen that, it's actually pretty solid. And so I got nothing but good faith in what they'll be capable of doing.
All right, and we got Indy over here.
Well, besides Magic School Bus, all I can say is Doctor Who being Uncle Scrooge is a win-win.
All right, and what do you do and where can they find you?
You can find me on Console Xplosion, or you can find me on Thrill of the Hunt Gaming on YouTube.
Okay. And Ian, did you say where they can find you as well?
No, I didn't. But if you want to find me, you can find me on historicnerd.com, where you can go to Twitter and say hello at Historical Nerd. Or you can find me on YouTube, Historic Nerd, one word. Or you can find me on the ConsoleXplosion.com.
Or VidMe.
Or VidMe, yeah, if you want to go there.
Or as he talks very quietly into his mic.
And Tyler?
Well, I'm currently watching this 90s show, The Swart Cats.
That was a good one.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, okay, but if you want to find me, I have a Twitter, VGH32. Also have a YouTube channel, The Video Game Hunter, or Hot Anime 32. They'll both take you to the same channel. And I also have a Demon Art where I do lots of weird and strange drawings. I'm actually working on a background for my video I'm working on. And I have a VidMe, which I am currently just uploading my old videos every Friday, which is Video Game Hunter.
All right. And Jared, do you have anything to add on?
Of course. You know what? Don't put it in your mouth.
Oh, God.
And you can catch me, of course, always
That's
on
what she
theConsoleXplosion.com. Make sure you follow us at Console Explosion on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. Make sure you check out all our wonderful videos and backlog of great podcasts featuring great TCX members on YouTube, as well as check out these podcasts, which actually should be uploading on wonderful VidMe. This will be the second and or first official VidMe podcast. So again, thank you, VidMe, and your new platform of plethora fun, I guess. Yay. And yeah, just remember, folks, don't put it in your mouth.
That's what she said.
And I'm your host, The Philosopher. You can find me on Facebook.com/Philosopher, YouTube.com/The Philosopher, or you can talk to me on Twitter at The Philosopher, of course, the Console Explosion as well. And so I want to know your thoughts on what you think of the new reboot for the Magic School Bus. It's not just the old episodes, it's a reboot. So we want to know what you think about it, how it's going to be. So let us know down below. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you want to see more content like this or many other things that we put on the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.